The emperor intends to marry off a princess to Huaibei, to appease the notorious Prince of Huai. Everyone in the capital knows that I have wholeheartedly loved Xie Jingji for 10 years. Yet in the Golden Yuan Hall, he personally spoke up and pushed me forward. He said I am both talented and beautiful, handling matters with grace, making me the best candidate to marry the Prince of Huai. With all the court officials present, he uttered such a casual sentence, sealing my fate for life. Fine. Just perfect. Xie Jingji, you better not regret this. After the court session, Xie Jingji walked toward me. The crimson court robe made him appear even more elegant and refined, as pure and radiant as jade. He stopped before me, his tone deliberately apologetic. Your Highness knows that the fifth princess is gentle and delicate, not as resilient as you. If she were truly to marry into Huaibei, I fear she would never return. I finished for him. He silently agreed. Then, Lord Xie. I looked at him. Have you ever considered that I, too, am a weak woman? If I marry there, would I not also die? He fell silent, his gaze slightly lowered. Xie Jingji, I asked softly, in all these years, have you ever cared about me, even for a moment? He lowered his eyes. It is I who am unworthy of your Highness. Not far away, my fifth sister was timidly watching us, like a startled fawn. A sudden surge of inexplicable malice welled up in my heart. In that case, I took half a step forward, speaking in a voice only the two of us could hear. Hold me, consider it a fulfillment of all these years of longing. Xie Jingji abruptly took a step back, his expression both panicked and disgusted. Your Highness, please have some self-respect. Watching his desperate attempt to avoid me, I suddenly realized how utterly laughable this decade-long obsession truly was. The news that I was to marry the Prince of Huai reached the inner palace. My mother let out a wailing cry. It's all your fault. Why did you have to be so stubborn all the time? What good did all that reading do? Now look what's happened. You're being sent off to that king of hell. She wept and cursed, denouncing Xie Jingji for his heartlessness and my father for his cruelty. Her words as coarse and vulgar as those of a country peasant woman. She was originally a peasant girl, brought back to the palace by my father solely for her beauty, only to be forgotten after a brief period of novelty. Before I grew up to become the most outstanding princess, my mother and I lived in a corner of the side hall for a full 6 years. If only I had a son, my mother murmured. If you had a son, how could you have been pushed out to die? Mother has always been troubled by this. If she had a son, father would surely favor her. Mother, Prince Huai may not be as terrifying as the rumors suggest. What do you know? Mother's face was streaked with tears. Everyone in the palace says he eats a bucket of rice and 10 pounds of meat in one meal, with a ghastly face and fangs, and could kill 10 of you with a single punch. Then she started sobbing again, as if she had already seen me beaten to death by the Prince of Huai. Those are just scary stories. The Prince of Huai's mother is a famous beauty. Besides, once I become the Princess of Huai, no one will dare to bully us anymore. She stared at me blankly, tears still streaking her face. But that night, I still dreamed of the Prince of Huai. In the dream, the Prince of Huai had a green face and fangs, saying to me, I am hungry. When I woke up in the morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes. Danlu said that fifth sister insisted on seeing me. I really don't want to see her. I'm no saint. I can't pretend nothing happened. But she stood outside the palace gate and refused to leave, afraid of causing gossip. I had no choice but to let her in. As the hall doors closed, fifth sister walked toward me, step by step. The smile on her face grew increasingly evident. She stopped 2 steps away from me, shedding her usual timidity. Third sister, you excel in everything, you read well, and your looks are first-rate. She tilted her head and smiled, appearing more lively and adorable than usual. But so what? Xie Jingji just doesn't like you. He even specifically advised the emperor to have you marry that brutal Prince of Huai. Duaning feigned a sigh of regret. I hear no one survives under Prince Huai's command. I wonder if you'll still be around this time next year. Third sister. What a pity you won't be able to drink the wedding wine at Jingji's and my celebration. I quietly watched her smug expression and spoke. Fifth sister. You said Xie Jingji pities you for your frail health because you fell ill 3 years ago while fetching medicine for him. But if he knew that it was I who went without food or water for 3 days, debating with the foreign monk to win that medicine, would he still choose you? The smile on fifth sister's face instantly froze. Suddenly, she knelt down, clutching my sleeve as she wept. Third sister. I truly love him. Please, let me have him. Before I could even react, Xie Jingji barged in. He immediately shielded fifth sister behind him, staring at me coldly. Why must your highness trouble Juanin? It was my idea to have you marry into the Huai Wang's household. If you want to blame someone, blame me. A chill ran through my heart. We grew up together. Yet in his eyes, I turned out to be such a person. Duaning sobbed, clutching Xie Jingji's sleeve. Brother Jingji. Third sister suddenly said that she was the one who fetched the medicine back then. You won't believe her, right? Xie Jingji looked at me, his gaze filled with undisguised distance. He took a step back and bowed solemnly. I truly do not deserve such deep affection from the princess. I beg you to maintain your dignity. I looked directly into his eyes. What if that medicine was truly obtained by me? Xie Jingji's expression grew serious, and he fell silent for a moment. At that moment, Duaning suddenly began to sob softly. He turned to glance at her, and when he spoke again, his tone had regained its calmness. Even so, the one I truly admire is still Princess Duaning. In a daze, I heard the 14-year-old Xie Jingji say, Yongning, don't cry, I will protect you. I looked at him, at Duaning whom he was tightly shielding, and smiled faintly. Then I wish the two of you, may every year bring this day, and every day be as this year. Father Emperor, perhaps feeling a sense of guilt, bestowed many jewels and even granted me special permission to leave the palace for a stroll. Mother consort, while picking out jewelry, muttered under her breath, calling Father Emperor a bastard. Remember to bring me the meat pies from Shisi Street and the sour plum drink from Li Datu's shop when you come back. The palace can't make that flavor. Got it. The bustling streets outside the palace are indeed more vibrant than those within. I bumped into Xie Jingji and Duaning at a clay figurine stall. His father died saving the emperor, and the emperor treats him more dearly than his own son. I was able to leave the palace only by trading a distant marriage for this favor. Yet with just a word, he could bring his beloved to see the world's vibrant life. Suddenly, I remembered that year when I was 15. I had also begged him to take me out of the palace to see the world. Back then, his expression turned solemn, and he simply said, "It goes against the rules. How did you leave the palace?" Xie Jingji was slightly taken aback upon seeing me. I'm about to marry far away to Huaibei. Can't I even take one last look at the capital before I die there? He frowned. That's not what I meant. Then he added, "You won't die." Duaning gently tugged at his sleeve from the side, calling out, "Brother Jingji." He pulled her hand away, as if wanting to step forward and say something more. Just then, the street suddenly erupted into chaos. A startled horse came galloping wildly, throwing the crowd into immediate disarray. The guards were swept away by the surging crowd. Xie Jingji shielded Duaning. I spotted a terrified child standing in the middle of the road and rushed over to scoop him up. The panicked horse was already upon us, its hooves raised high, about to come crashing down. I heard Xie Jingji calling my name in the distance. Yongning. In the blink of an eye, a flash of gleaming blade light swept past, and the startled horse crashed to the ground. A young man of extraordinary beauty stood before me, his black cloak billowing. Not a single drop of blood splattered my way. He turned to look at me, his eyes and brows carrying a lazy, languid expression. Hey, scared stiff. The startled horse had fallen, and the chaos on the street gradually subsided. A young woman stumbled over, scooped up the child, and thanked me through her tears. Seeing his mother, the child finally burst into loud sobs, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank you." I turned to the young man. "I owe you my life, and I don't know how to repay you." I was about to offer a monetary reward when Xie Jingji quickly stepped forward, pulling me behind him. "Who are you?" His tone was cold and harsh, bordering on rude. I felt a surge of displeasure at his attitude. The young man didn't even glance at him, only smiling as he asked me, "Just now, were you about to say, 'I have nothing to repay you with, so I offer myself,'" without waiting for my reply. He continued on his own. "Yi Mubai, 19, unmarried, no concubines, no lovers, decent family background, and you've seen my looks. What do you think?" I've always considered myself fairly quick-witted, but at that moment, I was left speechless by this street-side self-recommendation. Xie Jingji, for some reason, grew angry and scolded. "You insolent fool." He then called to the guards closing in, "Seize him." I immediately stepped forward, confronting Xie Jingji. "Let him go." Yi Mubai let out a light laugh and, before turning to leave, left behind a remark, "We will meet again." After Mubai left, Xie Jingji's expression remained unsoftened. "Your Highness conversing with a strange man on the street is truly improper." I looked up at him. "By what identity does Lord Xie speak these words to me?" "Your Highness, I am doing this for your own good. You are to marry the Prince of Huai. That one is not easy to get along with. I hope your Highness will maintain proper boundaries." "If we are speaking of boundaries," I said calmly, "I only hope that Lord Xie will stay as far away from me as possible from now on." He seemed to be pricked by something and fell silent for a moment, as he left with Duaning. His retreating figure even showed a hint of disarray. On the way back to the palace, a young servant dressed in black suddenly caught up and handed over a wooden box. "Miss, a gentleman asked me to give this to you." Inside the box was a clay figurine, sculpted in the likeness of me debating with a foreign monk 3 years ago, capturing even the expression between my brows with perfect accuracy. "Who sent this?" Before the words had even fully left my mouth, that name had already flashed through my mind. Yi Mubai. This clay figure reminded me of that incident 3 years ago. Back then, Xie Jingji had just become an official when someone poisoned him, and he was on the brink of death. The imperial physicians were all helpless. Even after searching the world for renowned doctors, my father couldn't save him. Later, I heard that a strange monk had arrived in the outskirts of the capital, holding a medicine that could cure all poisons. This monk was particularly stubborn. He didn't want gold or silver, but loved debating scriptures and discussing philosophy with people. If he took a liking to someone, he wouldn't charge a single coin. If he didn't, no amount of money would be of any use. I had no choice but to take Duaning to find him in secret. The monk said, "If you want the medicine, you can have it, just win the debate against me." Duaning stayed in the courtyard while I entered the meditation room alone. Even now, thinking back on those 3 days still pains me. Without drinking water or eating, my throat was so dry it felt like it was bleeding, and by the end, my mind was no longer clear, relying solely on sheer willpower to hold on. On the evening of the 3rd day, the monk finally conceded. "This humble monk has lost." My vision went black, and I fainted. When I woke up, the monk said, "Your mate has already taken the medicine and left." I later found out that Duanin had been telling everyone that it was she who knelt outside the door for 3 days and 3 nights, moved the monk, and obtained the medicine, and Xie Jingji actually believed her words. Now, thinking back carefully, the monk always had a cold-faced girl carrying a sword by his side, who looked very much like Xie Jingji. She always wore a stern expression, was a head taller than me, and when I greeted her, she didn't even acknowledge me. During those 3 days of debating scriptures, she often came and went. Every time she came back, she would silently stand in the corner watching us discuss the Tao. The only time she paid any attention to me was when I woke up, desperately thirsty and too weak to move. So I had to ask her to feed me water. though she looked reluctant, she still brought over a bowl of water. Later, after I returned to the palace, I sent someone to thank her, but the palace attendants said the monk and that girl had long since left, and their whereabouts were unknown. Could she be Yi Mubai's sister? Did she tell him about this experience? I was thinking about how to find that girl through Yi Mubai to repay the kindness of that bowl of water. Xie Jingji suddenly suggested to my father that I should not be allowed to leave the palace. He spoke eloquently in the hall. The Prince of Huai has a violent temper. If something were to happen to the princess outside, we would have no way to explain it. What's even more ridiculous is that he actually volunteered to be my teacher, saying he would teach me about the customs and culture of Huaibei. I burst out laughing right then and there. Does Lord Xie have a screw loose? He used to avoid me, and now he wants to teach me. I deliberately asked him, does Duaning know you're coming to be my teacher? Xie Jingji remained unperturbed. Duaning is kind-hearted. Not like your highness. Naturally, she wouldn't mind. These words made my blood boil. Just as I was about to retort, my mother's voice came from outside the door. You, Xie Jingji, how well Yongning treated you back then, and yet you turned around and harmed her. In the past 2 years, my mother had actually won my father's favor because of her straightforward nature. She pointed at Xie Jingji and scolded, "Get out of here. Even if Yongning were to marry the king of hell, it wouldn't be your place to lecture her." Xie Jingji was scolded until his face turned pale, slinking away in disgrace. I discreetly winked at Danlu. Well done. Long before Xie Jingji arrived, I had sent Danlu to fetch my mother. The more she used to like him, the more she detests him now. After Xie Jingji left, my mother continued to curse at the palace gate. Blind fool, I should have let him die from the poison back then, while I was still thinking about how to leave the palace again. An unexpected event occurred in the court. Originally, my father had betrothed me to the Prince of Huai, ostensibly as a favor, but in reality, it was for surveillance. Throughout the dynasties, princesses who were married off to the fiefdoms of feudal lords either ended up neglected in secluded courtyards, dying of melancholy, or met with sudden, mysterious deaths. On the day I received the imperial decree, I had already prepared myself for humiliation. As per custom, the court sent the marriage edict to Huaibei, merely going through the motions. The only hope was that the Prince of Huai would not turn away the princess's carriage, and that the royal family's dignity could be preserved. That alone would be a stroke of luck. To everyone's surprise, the Prince of Huai not only submitted a memorial of gratitude but also sent a full 18 carts of betrothal gifts along with it. The officials of the Ministry of Rites were utterly stunned. Everyone knew that Huaibei was prosperous, but no one expected the Prince of Huai to be so extravagantly generous. What was even more astonishing was that in his memorial, he inquired in great detail, what kind of gemstone quality, fabrics, and tastes did the princess prefer. He would ensure everything was prepared accordingly. The entire court was in an uproar. Never before has a feudal prince shown such regard for a princess of marriage alliance. The ministers were beaming with joy, as if they could already see the Huai prince submitting. Yet, there were 3 people who could not share in the happiness. Xie Jingji's face was dark and gloomy. I had gained the favor of the Huai prince, but he seemed to be holding back a breath of anger. Upon hearing the news, Duaning immediately smashed her teacup. As for me, a faint unease stirred within my heart. How could someone as formidable as the Prince of Huai so easily show goodwill towards the court? With such a grand display, was he trying to lull the court into complacency, or did he have other schemes in mind, seizing the moment of my father's delight? I once again received permission to leave the palace. No sooner had I stood at the street corner than Yi Mubai appeared out of nowhere. I asked him directly, "Do you have a twin sister? 3 years ago, did she accompany a foreign monk?" His face suddenly changed, and the servant beside him burst out laughing. Yi Mubai awkwardly scratched his nose. To be honest, 3 years ago, due to some unavoidable circumstances, I once disguised myself as a maid beside the foreign monk, he hurriedly added. But I absolutely had no disrespectful intentions toward you, miss. My mind was buzzing with shock. I had guessed he might have a sister, even considered various possibilities, but I never expected it to be a man disguised as a woman. Recalling how I had just woken from a faint, not only had I let him feed me water, but I had also pulled his hand and wrapped my arms around his waist because I was too weak to move. My face instantly flushed with heat. Why didn't you push me away at the time? Yi Mubai smiled bitterly and cupped his hands in apology. It was my fault. Whether you wish to scold or strike me, Mubai will not complain. How do you plan to make amends? I examined the fabric of his clothing. It was this year's new embroidery pattern from Huaibei, and his accent carried a hint of the Huaibei dialect. You're from Huaibei, aren't you? I probed. How much do you know about the Prince of Huai? He pondered for a moment. I know a little, just as I had expected, that day. When we met during the startled horse incident, I could tell from his demeanor that he was no ordinary person. Prince Huai. I lowered my voice. Does he have a preference for men? Phut, the servant behind him, spat out a mouthful of tea. Yi Mubai's expression turned odd. How could you think that? I said. Back then, the courtesan who was the most beautiful in the capital tried to win his favor, but he rejected her. The beauties others sent him, he gave away to his subordinates. There wasn't a single concubine in his mansion, yet he often shared a bed with his strategist, Master Jiang. Their relationship was far from ordinary. As soon as the words left my mouth, even the servant's face darkened. Yi Mubai took a deep breath and gritted his teeth, saying, Prince Huai is perfectly normal. Yi Mubai praised Prince Huai to the skies. Tall and upright, handsome in appearance, unparalleled in grace, gentle in character, he is a rare good man. I felt a wave of doubt. You praise him so highly. Could it be that you also admire Prince Huai yourself? He looked at me with bright, intense eyes. I am. The servant hastily interjected. My young master is a guard by Prince Huai's side. Yi Mubai shot the servant a glare before explaining that he had come to the capital with Prince Huai's betrothal gift procession. I took the opportunity to inquire about the Prince of Huai's preferences and taboos. Since I was going to marry him, the more I knew, the better my chances of survival. He briefly mentioned a few things, then suddenly turned the question back on me. Your Highness is so concerned about our prince. Could it be that you've taken a liking to him? How could that be? I recounted all the bad rumors about the Prince of Huai circulating in the capital. Yi Mubai listened with a deepening frown. Just then, a burst of raucous laughter came from the private room next door, where a few drunken young nobles were talking nonsense. Princess Yongling's figure is even more alluring than the top courtesan at Drunken Red Pavilion. What a shame she has to marry that brute, the Prince of Huai. If it weren't for looking down on her mother's lowly background back then, I would have gone to propose marriage long ago. Tell me, has Xie Jingji slept with her yet? Probably not. Right, hard to say. With looks like that, what man could resist? I've heard far worse things than this since I was a child, so I've long since stopped caring. Yet Yi Mubai was so furious his face turned ashen, and he kicked open the door of the neighboring room. Who the hell are you? Do you know who we are? Those few dandies talked tough, but their bodies were already shrinking back. Yi Mubai sneered coldly. I'm your ancestor. He beat them until they were crying for their parents in no time. If it weren't for the servant holding him back tightly, he would have almost cut out their tongues. Why? I was very puzzled. You're a follower of the Prince of Huai. Shouldn't you hate Yongning? Yi Mubai turned around, his strikingly handsome features particularly distinct under the lamplight. Because everyone in Huaibei knows that the Prince of Huai is fond of Princess Yongning. Before Yi Mubai could finish his words, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a run. My heart pounded in my chest, unsure if it was from the sprint or something else. Your servant, I gasped, trying to cover up the awkwardness from earlier. Will he be left alone and get into trouble with those people? Yi Mubai smiled carelessly. That kid is cunning enough. In this world, only he can make others suffer. Although he had just arrived in the capital, he knew all the best places to have fun. He took me to see Gongsun Jianyang's sword dance and then led me to a tea house to listen to a storytelling performance. Finally, I had a bowl of steaming hot wontons at a small stall at the end of the alley, a flavor I had never tasted in the palace. We sat on the roof of someone's house. I have a friend, I said softly, gazing at the moon. She used to get bullied all the time, but then a boy told her to read more, become smarter, and no one would dare bully her again. She really read a lot of books, growing smarter and more valued. But the one who once promised to protect her, because she read too many books, sent her to a dangerous place. Yi Mubai listened quietly. How do you know? He turned to look at me, his gaze clear. That must be a dangerous place. Perhaps it could be a new beginning. I stared at him blankly, and only then did he realize I was still holding his wrist, quickly letting go. The tips of his ears flushed slightly red under the moonlight. Sorry, that was rude. I shook my head, suddenly feeling the night breeze turn gentle. The next day, as I was leaving the palace, I met Xie Jingji at the palace gate. He asked me, "Do you know Yi Mubai's true identity?" Seeing that I did not answer, his expression grew complicated. "So you've already guessed it?" "Yes." The servant's unusual behavior last night, Yi Mubai's understanding and defense of the Huai prince, and the imposing manner in which Yi Mubai broke the playboy's leg, it wasn't hard to deduce that Yi Mubai is the Huai prince. Yi Shuo, Xie Jingji warned me not to be deceived by Yi Shuo's false affections. This man is ruthless. Over a few drunken words, he broke their legs and even cut out one man's tongue overnight. If it weren't for the powerful Huaibei army, would the victims have swallowed their grievances in silence? Lord Xie, have you heard what those drunken words were about? I asked. He was momentarily at a loss for words. They were insulting me. Yi Shuo was standing up for me. I think cutting out that tongue was just right. Xie Jingji looked pained. They were just drunk. They didn't mean it. If Duaning were insulted like that, I cut him off. Would you also say just a few drunken words? He blurted out. Duaning would never be so ostentatious and invite criticism. I couldn't help but laugh. Is it my fault for being good-looking? Looking at his evasive eyes, I suddenly understood one thing. Xie Jingji did not favor Juanan more out of pity, but rather because he only loved himself. In his heart, my beauty and talent were seen as ostentatious, capable of tarnishing his image of integrity and purity. Only by choosing the utterly ordinary Juanan would the world believe he was not swayed by beauty. I took half a step back and bowed to him with proper respect. "What are you doing?" he asked, somewhat flustered. "To thank you for helping me back then. From now on, we are strangers." Without another glance at his stunned expression, I turned and walked toward the palace gates. Yi Mubai, no, it should be Yi Shuo now, was waiting at the intersection. Yongning, he hurried forward, his expression anxious. "Listen to me. I didn't mean to hide it from you." Yi Shuo explained to me that earlier, the generals in Huaibei had all stopped him from coming to the capital, saying it was practically a suicide mission. Who knew if the emperor would take the opportunity to end his life? But he insisted on coming. "I can't let you marry into Huaibei all alone. I want to come and fetch you myself, to marry you in a grand and glorious manner." In the end, both sides compromised. He promised his strategist, Jiang Beihe, that he would not reveal his identity until everything was properly arranged. He was so honest that the little bit of displeasure in my heart dissipated. After the Prince of Huai's identity was exposed, although my father was furious that he had entered the capital without permission, the thought of the 200,000 elite troops in Huaibei and the elusive Jiang Beihe, who had already left the capital, forced him to swallow his anger. Now that Yi Shuo has revealed his true face, all the rumors about him being a green-faced, fanged monster have been completely debunked. The shrewd people in the palace are experts at judging others and adjusting their behavior accordingly. Seeing the Prince of Huai sending rare treasures to me every day, they all rushed to curry favor. My mother, the imperial consort, was even more triumphant, telling everyone she met, "This son-in-law is 10,000 times better than Xie Jingji." The day before leaving the capital, Duaning actually sought out Yi Shuo. "Your Highness, I am Duaning. It was supposed to be me who married into Huaibei. It was my sister and Xie Jingji who secretly manipulated things." Yi Shuo looked at her. Duaning was overjoyed and added, "Sister and Xie Jingji have been having an affair for a long time. 3 years ago, she even begged for medicine for him. Your Highness, you must not be deceived." Yi Shuo curled the corner of his lips, his expression icy cold. "Fifth Princess, the only reason you can stand here safely is because you are Yongning's sister." The murderous intent in the words made Duaning's legs go weak, and he stumbled back a few steps. At that moment, Xie Jingji emerged from behind the pillar, his face deathly pale. "Duaning, you once said with your own mouth that you knelt for 3 days and 3 nights to beg for that antidote." Duaning clearly hadn't expected Xie Jingji to be here, let alone to have witnessed the entire scene. Her face instantly turned deathly pale. "Brother Jingji, why are you here?" Her voice trembled, and then, as if struck by a sudden thought, she shrieked, "Are you still unable to let her go?" Xie Jingji did not answer, only staring blankly at the sight of me standing side by side with Yi Shuo, his gaze complex. Duaning's face was filled with resentment. "Your Highness, look, Xie Jingji came here to secretly meet with my sister. You must not be deceived." Yi Shuo's expression remained calm, and he merely glanced at her indifferently. "Even if Yongning deceives me, I am willing to accept it." These words caused Duaning to completely lose her composure. Hearing these words, Xie Jingji's body swayed slightly. He looked at our clasped hands, a flicker of pain flashing in his eyes, and said to me in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry." Then he forcefully pulled Duanin away, from afar. Duanin's resentful curses could still be heard. I did not ask Yi Shuo if he had taken those provocations to heart. Tonight, with the gentle breeze and bright moon, it truly wasn't the time to let unrelated people ruin the mood. Coincidentally, Yi Shuo shared the same thought as I did. Gazing at the distant lights, he said softly, "The moonlight in Huaibei is clearer and brighter than in the capital. When you arrive there, I'll take you to see eagles soaring and the sun setting over the long river." I smiled slightly, mimicking his earlier tone. "All right, then from now on in Huaibei, I'll be counting on you to take good care of me." The day I left the capital, the scene was exceptionally grand. The Prince of Huai came in person to receive the bride, and the Ministry of Rites dared not be the slightest bit negligent. The common people crowded along the streets to watch the excitement, seeing Yi Shuo's handsome appearance and the Huaiwang mansion people scattering money. Everyone shouted at the top of their lungs, "The prince and princess are a match made in heaven." Xie Jingji, following his father's orders, represented the royal family in escorting the bride to the city gate. He walked up to Yi Shuo's horse and deliberately spoke ambiguously, "Your Highness, Yongning and I grew up together, and our bond is quite special. I have a few words I'd like to say to her alone. I hope you don't mind." Danlu, standing nearby, glared angrily. "He's clearly trying to stir up trouble. I'll go tear his mouth apart." Most men would feel uncomfortable hearing such words, but I believe in Yi Shuo. Yi Shuo sat on his horse, looking down at Xie Jingji, his dark eyes revealing no emotion. "Of course," he smiled. "Speaking of which, I should toast you, Lord Xie, with a cup of matchmaker's wine. If it weren't for you, how could I have married Yongning?" He turned and ordered, "Bring the wine." The attendant brought the wine. Xie Jingji stared at the wine cup, his expression grim, and he hesitated to drink. "Lord Xie," Yi Shuo raised his cup. "So many ministers are watching, I'll drink first to show my respect." He downed it in one gulp. Xie Jingji's hands trembled as he closed his eyes and forced himself to drink it down. I stepped down from the sedan chair. Lord Xie, did my father have any other instructions? Xie Jingji's expression shifted back and forth, and finally he whispered, Yongning, I was wrong. If I had known it was you back then, I cut him off. You know, you said that even if I was the one who fetched the medicine, you still liked dueling. Have you forgotten that? He hurriedly explained. At that time, I thought you were lying to me. Yongning, I regret it. Lord Xie, I interrupted him. Spilled water cannot be taken back. I don't want to hear your regrets. Just as I was about to turn and leave, I heard him whisper softly, Yongning, I won't give up, I will bring you back. Hearing Xie Jingji's final words, I truly felt uneasy. Yi Shuo, on the other hand, wasn't worried at all, playing mind games. Jiang Xiaoniao could be his master. Jiang Xiaoniao, it was Jiang Beihe, the servant who was by my side before, that was him in disguise. Hearing him say this, I finally felt at ease. As we entered the Huaibei region, it was indeed as Yi Shuo had said. Everyone here knew that the Prince of Huai was fond of Princess Yongning. From the moment we entered Huaibei, commoners along the way kept arriving with congratulatory gifts to celebrate the Prince of Huai's wedding. Some carried a bag of fresh wheat, others held a melon larger than their face, some offered a basket of eggs, and a hunter even brought a few lively, hopping rabbits. The prince's household staff expertly accepted the gifts and then presented return gifts in kind. Sometimes it was a packet of sugar, other times a beautiful hairpin. The hunter who had brought the rabbit waved his hands repeatedly. I'm just happy for the prince, how could I possibly accept a gift in return? The servant from the prince's residence smiled and took out a small bow. Hasn't your son been wanting this for a long time? The hunter hesitated for a moment, then took the bow and thanked him profusely. I watched the endless stream of common folk, all of whom had come of their own accord, each face glowing with genuine affection for Yi Shuo. He is deeply loved by the people, I whispered softly to Danlu, yet Danlu looked at me with deep concern. Your Highness, Prince Huai is a good man. If the officials in my hometown were like him, my family wouldn't have been left with only me. I know. I quietly tightened my grip on the small medicine bottle hidden in my sleeve. Before leaving the capital, my father had specifically instructed me to slip this slow-acting poison into Yi Shuo's food and drink. This poison would gradually weaken a person until they died without a sound. Life in Huaibei was peaceful and fulfilling, and everyone in the Huaibei palace treated me well. The only thing I couldn't get used to was Yi Shuo's insatiable demands. Sometimes he was too greedy, and I really wanted to slip him some medicine. At the end of that year, I learned that something had happened in the capital. Ever since I married into Huaibei, my father has set his sights on Duaning, wanting her to marry the king of Nanyu, who is already over 50. The king of Nanyu's grandson is even older than Duaning, so naturally, she refused. She tearfully begged Xie Jingji to find a way, but this time, he ignored her with a cold expression. So, at a palace banquet, Duaning drugged Xie Jingji, and the two were discovered by palace servants in disheveled clothing. The emperor was furious and had no choice but to arrange Duaning's marriage to Xie Jingji. Though he began to harbor resentment toward him after the marriage, Xie Jingji never once set foot in Duaning's room. Taking advantage of the situation, spies from Nanyu approached Duaning. Driven by a desire for revenge, she stole the military deployment map of the border. Now, the Nanyu army has advanced unimpeded and is on the verge of reaching the city gates. I asked Yi Shuo, you knew all along that Nanyu would rebel, didn't you? He fell silent for a moment, then whispered softly, Yongning, don't blame me. I could only ensure that Huaibei wouldn't strike first. The people of this land have suffered for far too long. I understand. The emperor is incompetent. The crown prince is absurd. You feudal lords were bound to rebel sooner or later. It's just that my mother is still in the capital. Rest assured, he promised. My people will keep her safe. When spring arrived the following year, Xie Jingji unexpectedly opened the city gates and surrendered to Nanyu. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing my mother safely arrive in Huaibei, my gaze fell upon her noticeably swollen belly. "You are..." I was momentarily at a loss for words. The imperial consort stroked her belly, looking quite pleased. "This time, it's definitely a son." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. I had thought the child in my mother's womb was the late emperor's posthumous child, but she curled her lips and said, "Who would want to carry that old man's seed? Aside from you, none of his other children have amounted to anything." I was stunned. "Then it's Lin the guards." My mother stroked her belly. Her brows and eyes relaxed. "When he returns from the war with the prince, our family will live a good life together." I went to ask Yishur about the character of this imperial guard Lin. He was wiping his sword, looked up and smiled. "Don't worry, with us around, he will only treat your mother better." Yishur handed me the token to the secret chamber of the Huai prince's residence. I asked him, "Do you trust me that much?" He reached out and pulled me into his embrace, his voice falling beside my ear. "I know your father gave you poison, but Yongning, you can't bear to use it." "Yes, I can't bear to." 3 years of raging war, I guarded the Huai prince's residence, watching battle reports arrive one after another. The king of Nanyu declared himself emperor, various feudal lords engaged in chaotic warfare, and the Huaibei army advanced with unstoppable momentum, until the news of victory arrived. The Huaibei army had breached the capital. I stood atop the city tower, gazing into the distance as the army returned in triumph. Yishur, clad in full military attire, made his way through the cheering crowd toward me. "You've waited long." The world was now settled. The dust had finally settled. The king of Nanyu did not ultimately die at the hands of his enemies but perished in the internal strife of his sons and grandsons vying for power, which indeed echoed the saying, "What goes around comes around." As for Duaning, some say she died amidst the chaos of war, while others claim she fled overseas in the turmoil. Yishur once asked me, should we send someone to search for her whereabouts? I remained silent for a moment, then slowly shook my head. The sisterly bond between her and me had long been severed years ago when she falsely claimed to have saved my life. Xie Jingji repeatedly requested to see me in prison, but I never went. Later, the jailer reported that he had taken his own life in prison, leaving behind only a blood-stained letter, on which the words "I regret my past actions" were written over and over again. I did not read that letter. Many more years passed. Our child had grown into a handsome young man. One evening at dusk, Yishur held my hand as we stood atop the city wall, watching the sunset glow spread across the sky. "These years have been hard on you," he whispered softly, "trapped within these palace walls, helping me govern this vast realm." I shook my head with a smile. "I promised to show you all the magnificent landscapes of this land. It's time we both see them." On the day the new emperor ascended the throne, the 50-year-old prince of Huai still had eyes as clear and bright as a young man's. "Yongning, let's go." After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. After I married Xianingchen, he remained cold and distant, treating me with polite respect. 4 years later, for the sake of his beloved Bai Yueguang, Xie Yuqing, he took a desperate risk, attempting to rebel against the Empress Dowager. In her fury, the Empress Dowager ordered Xianingchen executed, and I was implicated as well. From the lofty position of Princess Changning, I was demoted to a commoner and exiled to a harsh, desolate land. Having just suffered a miscarriage and sinking into deep depression after my demotion, I finally breathed my last. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in the imperial palace, hidden behind a screen. Outside the screen, the Empress Dowager was arranging a marriage for Xianingchen. "I am the Princess of Chongning. taken into the palace by the Empress Dowager since childhood and raised by her side, no different from a princess. The Empress Dowager dotes on me greatly and once hinted at the idea of arranging for me to become the Emperor's consort, but having grown up in the palace since childhood, I have long been accustomed to witnessing the ruthless scheming and power struggles among the concubines vying for favor in the imperial harem. I truly did not wish to become one of them, so I politely declined the Empress Dowager's offer. Xianingchen, on the other hand, is the adopted son of Vice Minister Xie from the Ministry of Revenue and the newly crowned top scholar. At the Qianglin banquet, Xianingchen carried himself with grace and elegance. Standing tall and noble like an orchid or a jade tree, he responded to the emperor's questions with neither arrogance nor subservience, striking a perfect balance between respect and confidence. The emperor asked with a smile, "Minister Xie, with your talent and charm, you must already have a house full of wives and concubines, right?" Xianingchen, however, replied, "This humble official's heart only yearns for a lifelong bond like that of Mandarin ducks, one person for a lifetime. If I could marry a virtuous wife, that would be more than enough. I dare not entertain the thought of having many wives and concubines." From then on, my gaze would linger on him, unable to look away. I pleaded with the Empress Dowager for 3 long days before she finally relented and agreed to arrange a marriage between me and Xianingchen. Yet she remained puzzled. Although Xianingchen has achieved the top rank in the imperial examinations, he is still only the adopted son of Minister Xie. And his background is not noble. Why are you so determined to marry him and no one else? I am a golden branch and jade leaf, while Xianingchen is merely a scattered leaf from a side branch of the minister's household. Indeed, there is a world of difference between us. Yet after the Qianglin banquet, I set my heart on Xianingchen, determined to become the one and only for a lifetime he spoke of. Little did I know that when he said those words, he was actually thinking of his sister, the biological daughter of Minister Xie Yuqing. The reason he was willing to marry me was simply because Xie Yuqing intended to enter the palace as a consort, but she feared that I might also marry the emperor. With the Empress Dowager's favor toward me, I could easily overshadow her in the harem. Reborn and returned, I found myself back at the very moment when the Empress Dowager was bestowing a marriage upon Xianingchen. Beyond the screen, Xianingchen knelt on the ground, bowing in gratitude for the marriage bestowed by the Empress Dowager. "I am deeply moved and grateful for your Majesty's gracious gift of marriage." Yet, there was no trace of joy in his voice. "It seems I have arrived a step too late." Disregarding all propriety, I rushed out from behind the screen and bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager. "Your Majesty, if Scholar Xie is unwilling, then perhaps this arranged marriage should be called off." Upon hearing this, Xianingchen abruptly raised his head, his eyes filled with disbelief. The Empress Dowager was also taken aback and asked me, "Chongning, have you perhaps changed your mind?" I understood the implication behind her words. She thought I no longer wanted to marry Xianingchen and instead wished to marry the emperor. I found myself in a dilemma, having suffered in my previous life from Xianingchen's coldness, exploitation, and even being implicated to the point of death. I no longer wished to marry him, but I also had no desire to marry the emperor and become one of the many concubines in his vast harem. After much thought, I could only grit my teeth, shake my head, and reply to the Empress Dowager. Chongning only sensed reluctance in Scholar Xie's words, which is why she didn't wish to force him. Before the Empress Dowager could speak, Xianingchen interjected, "This humble official harbors no reluctance whatsoever. I vow to remain united in heart with the princess, pledging to stay together until our hair turns white." He looked at me, his gaze carrying a hint of surprise and urgency. Seeing that I had no further objections, the Empress Dowager gave her golden decree, bestowing marriage upon us. As I stepped out of the hall, a tall and graceful figure stood beneath the corridor. Xianingchen was waiting for me, his face filled with displeasure. As soon as he saw me, he couldn't wait to say, "Princess. What did you mean earlier in the Great Hall when you said in front of the Empress Dowager, perhaps the matter of the marriage should be forgotten? Such jokes are fine between us in private, but how could you say them in front of the Empress Dowager?" He probably thought I was still the same person who used to obey his every whim, and that I was just playing hard to get, flirting with him. I also darkened my expression. "Top scholar Xie, don't take me for a fool. I know exactly why you want to marry me. Moreover, you and I are not yet married, so we should observe proper etiquette. How dare you speak to me in such an interrogative tone before this princess? Aren't you afraid I might punish you for overstepping your bounds?" Xie Ningchen was taken aback by my stern tone for the first time, and having his true feelings exposed, his expression shifted repeatedly before he finally lowered his head. "Yes, I am at fault, in this life. Since I cannot escape the fate of marrying Xie Ningchen, I must no longer give him my heart and soul, only to end up being implicated and meeting a tragic death." The next day, the Grand Tutor's wife invited the ladies from various families to the Grand Tutor's residence to admire the flowers. Xie Ningchen, having learned that I was at the Grand Tutor's residence, specifically sent someone to deliver a lacquered box, claiming it was an apology for offending me in the palace the day before. He made such a grand gesture, clearly intending to put on a show of affection between us in front of everyone. I opened the lacquered box, and inside was an exquisite golden hairpin. All the ladies in the household were aware that the Empress Dowager had arranged a marriage between me and Xie Ningchen. Now, upon hearing that Xie Ningchen had sent a golden hairpin, they immediately gathered around. Even the lacquer box alone is exquisitely crafted. Scholar Xie is truly thoughtful. Even before the marriage, the bond between the princess and Scholar Xie is already so strong, it's truly enviable. They chatted one after another, making my head ache a little. I noticed that the Grand Tutor's wife seemed to be quite fond of this hairpin, so I said, "Madam, I see that the peony carved on this hairpin is elegant and dignified, which suits you very well. Why don't I offer it to you as a gift?" Before the Grand Tutor's wife could respond, Xie Yuqing gracefully walked in. At a glance, she spotted the hairpin in my hand and chuckled softly, saying, "This hairpin of yours, princess, looks quite familiar. I suppose it was a gift from Brother Ningchen. Originally, I had it made for myself to wear, but I never expected that a peony crafted from gold would look so tacky and ill-suited to me. Who would have thought that Brother Ningchen would pass it on to you? Princess, it actually suits you quite well." She raised her eyebrows, looking at me with an expression that seemed to relish my embarrassment. Before I could even speak, her words had already managed to offend the Grand Tutor's wife. The Grand Tutor's wife turned her head first to ask the maid attending beside her, "Which family's relative is this young lady who has arrived so fashionably late?" Minister Xie held the third rank, so there was no way the Grand Tutor's wife wouldn't recognize his daughter, yet she deliberately intended to humble Xie Yuqing's pride. After the maid replied, the Grand Tutor's wife nodded. "Since Miss Xie is the daughter of Minister Xie, the princess is to be your future sister-in-law. Allow me, as an elder, to say this. The eldest sister-in-law is like a mother. Miss Xie should show the princess more respect." Xie Yuqing suffered this setback but dared not openly refute the Grand Tutor's wife, nor did she feel comfortable getting up and leaving immediately. She could only turn her head away. I smiled, walked over, and broke off a branch of crabapple blossoms in full bloom, helping the Grand Tutor's wife pin it in her hair. "Madam, no matter how exquisitely the peony on this hairpin is carved, it remains a lifeless object. This branch of crabapple, still adorned with dewdrops, clear and sparkling, is far more fitting to wear in your hair. As for that hairpin, I've decided to bestow it upon the maid by your side." Xie Yuqing, her face turned away, gradually flushed with a rosy hue. Early the next morning, Xie Ningchen brought Xie Yuqing to the princess's residence, demanding to see me with an imposing air. The moment he laid eyes on me, Xianingchen's brows furrowed so tightly they nearly formed the character for river, and he ground out a few words through clenched teeth. Princess, if you don't care for the hairpin I gave you, that's fine, but why use it to humiliate Sister Yuqing in front of everyone? After the great humiliation Sister Yuqing suffered at the Grand Tutor's residence yesterday, she hasn't been able to eat or drink since returning. Last night, she even developed a fever. I glance at Xie Yuqing, who is following delicately behind Xianingchen. Her face is pale, without a trace of makeup, and she does indeed look ill. She timidly tugs at Xianingchen's sleeve. Brother Ningchen, let it be. It's all my fault for being of lowly status, unworthy in the eyes of the princess and the Grand Tutor's wife. Even the hairpin you gave me was looked down upon by everyone. Before she could finish speaking, she swayed as if she couldn't stand steady. Xianingchen quickly supported her waist, guiding her to sit on a chair, and comforted her gently. Yue, sit and rest for a while. I will definitely seek justice for the grievances you've suffered. He turned his head and glared at me. Princess, the imperial physician said that Yuqing's fever is entirely due to the grievances she has suffered, which have accumulated in her chest. As for yesterday's incident, you should apologize to her, and the matter of you giving the hairpin I gifted you to a servant will be forgotten. I smiled gently. I wasn't aware that there was an imperial physician who could diagnose grievances. Might I ask, Scholar Xie, which one it is? I must ask the emperor to grant him the title of a great master physician. I wonder if he has diagnosed what grievance Miss Xie has suffered. Is it that in front of all the official ladies, she said the hairpin you, the top scholar Xie, gave to this princess was something she found too vulgar and didn't want? Or is it that she arrived late, and upon entering, instead of greeting the official ladies, she immediately started arguing with her future sister-in-law? Or perhaps it was when the Grand Tutor's wife couldn't stand it any longer and said a few words, and she just turned her head away without responding. Xianingchen couldn't help but glance back at Xie Yuqing, likely having no idea about the whole story. As I spoke further, my expression darkened. A daughter of a high-ranking minister's household, showing such a lack of propriety in front of all the official ladies. If word gets out, everyone will surely laugh at the minister's household for lacking proper upbringing. The Grand Tutor's wife only spoke up because she couldn't bear to watch. If you, the top scholar Xie, find it inappropriate, feel free to go to the Grand Tutor's residence and demand an explanation. The Grand Tutor is the Emperor's teacher and a model for all scholars in the realm. As the top scholar, Xianingchen would never dare to say that the Grand Tutor's wife was wrong in her reprimand. He stood beside Xie Yuqing, his originally fair, jade-like face gradually flushing red from the ears. Xie Yuqing lay over the chair, weeping pitifully. Seeing this, Xianingchen felt his heart ache intensely. Princess, why must you be so relentless? Even if Sister Yuqing has done something wrong, she is so gravely ill now. What's the harm in offering an apology? If you insist on refusing, then, I took over the conversation. Then what? Then call off the engagement. That would be even better. I'll trouble the top scholar to explain this clearly to the Empress Dowager and ask Her Majesty to withdraw the decree. I, the princess, will await the good news. After saying this, I waved to the maid. See the guest out. Of course, Xianingchen did not ask the Empress Dowager to withdraw the decree, and our wedding date soon arrived. On the night of the wedding, I sat alone on the bridal bed, adorned in a phoenix crown and embroidered robes. The dragon and phoenix candles in the room cast a dim glow, and even through the veil over my head, I could see the flickering candlelight. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Just like in my previous life. In my previous life, I sat through the entire night, but Xianingchen never came. It wasn't until the next morning when the sky was fully bright that he finally appeared outside the door, looking apologetic as he said to me, "Princess, I drank too much last night and didn't want to disturb you. So I rested in the side room." How could I have known that he had spent the whole night in the side room? drinking while gazing at Xie Yuqing's portrait. At the time, I believed him completely and immediately went to the kitchen myself to cook him a bowl of sobering soup to bring to him. Xie Ningchen, however, was not appreciative and instead frowned, saying, "Your Highness is a noble lady of royal descent. Why trouble yourself with cooking, if word gets out? It would make my Hanlin Academy seem shabby." After Xie Ningchen achieved the top rank in the imperial examinations, he entered the Hanlin Academy as was customary, becoming a 7th-rank Hanlin compiler. This was a humble, powerless position with little real authority. He cherished his reputation and feared being criticized by outsiders for appearing impoverished, but to my ears, I thought he was being considerate of me, which is why he wouldn't let me cook. Looking back, I can only think how foolish I was, blinded and misled by my emotions, but this time, I don't plan to wait foolishly any longer. I lifted the bridal veil and was just about to instruct the maid to prepare for bed when the door was pushed open. Xie Ningchen walked in carrying a food box. Seeing me with my veil lifted, he looked momentarily startled but quickly composed himself. "You must have been waiting a long time, princess, and are surely hungry. I specially went to Liuxiangjai to buy freshly baked Osmanthus cakes. Please have some." I never expected that even before we were married, Xie Ningchen would already know I love the Osmanthus cakes from Liuxiangjai. He must have asked the servants around me in advance. I did not reach out to take the food box, only saying indifferently, "Now that the commandery prince consort status has changed, it would be best not to personally go to the pastry shop to buy pastries anymore. If word gets out and people outside find out, it would be unbecoming of your status." Xie Ningchen's hand holding the food box froze mid-air, neither extending nor withdrawing, his face filled with embarrassment. I covered my mouth and lightly yawned. "If the Lord Consort does not mind, please rest in the side chamber tonight. Early tomorrow morning, I must enter the palace to help the Empress Dowager inspect the candidates for the Imperial Consort selection, so I need to retire early. Tomorrow, the Emperor will select his consorts, and Xie Yuqing is determined to succeed. That is why Xie Ningchen bought Osmanthus cakes, deliberately trying to win me over, hoping I would put in a good word for her during the selection. How could I not know his intentions? The Emperor has turned 18 this year, yet the imperial harem remains empty, with even the position of Empress still vacant. Selecting consorts for the Emperor and filling the harem has become the royal family's top priority this year. I know this has also been a lingering concern for the Empress Dowager. Since the Emperor ascended the throne at the age of 3, the Empress Dowager has been ruling in his stead. In recent years, as the Emperor came of age, subtle murmurs began to rise within the court, gradually forming a faction that supported the Emperor's rule. The foremost demand of the imperial faction was the establishment of an empress. Once the empress was in place and the imperial harem stabilized, the second demand would likely be for the Empress Dowager to return governance to the emperor. Thus, when the Empress Dowager earlier asked me, "Changning, how many candidates do you think should be selected for this imperial consort selection?" I understood her intention and replied, "Your Majesty, in my opinion, the number of consorts in the harem should be left to the emperor's preference. Our emperor is not one for extravagance or indulgence. As for the empress," I shifted the topic, "I believe the second daughter of Duke Angua is an excellent choice. She has been well educated since childhood, dignified and virtuous, truly possessing the demeanor of a nation's mother. Duke Angua is the Empress Dowager's elder brother, choosing his daughter, the Empress Dowager's own niece, as the Empress would undoubtedly strengthen the Empress Dowager's influence." My words struck a chord with the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager nodded with a smile. "In that case, on the day of the selection, you should also come and help take a look." The next day was the day of the selection. I accompanied the Empress Dowager, watching over 100 candidates in a dizzying procession, and did not return to the mansion until nightfall. As soon as I entered the mansion, Xie Ningchen came forward to greet me, his face dark with anger. Princess, I heard that during today's selection, the emperor took a liking to Sister Yuqing at first sight and intended to make her empress, but then suddenly changed his mind and instead chose the second daughter of the Duke of An's household to be empress. Is this true? He spoke well. Today, during the selection of consorts in the palace hall, the moment the delicate and graceful Xie Yuqing appeared, she captured the emperor's favor. The emperor gave a glance to the eunuch beside him, signaling him to present the jade ruyi, a symbol of the empress's position, to Xie Yuqing. Just then, the Empress Dowager let out a soft cough. I stood behind the Empress Dowager, smiling cleverly at the emperor as I said, "Your Majesty, there are still several beauties waiting in the back. I've heard that the daughter of the Minister of Personnel and the young lady from the Duke's estate are among the candidates. Why not take a look at all of them before making a decision?" The emperor was taken aback for a moment, then nodded. In the end, the position of empress was bestowed upon the second daughter of the Duke of An's household. The emperor selected over 10 more candidates for concubines, among them Xie Ningchen's beloved younger sister, Xie Yuqing. The venomous glare she shot me when I spoke up to stop the emperor is still vivid in my mind. I deliberately sat down in the chair first and casually remarked, "After evaluating the candidates all day, my mouth is parched from talking." The maid beside me quickly poured a cup of tea, but before she could hand it to me, Xie Ningchen snatched it away and threw it to the ground. He no longer suppressed his anger, shouting at me loudly, "Today, the emperor clearly intended to make you the empress, yet you spoke out to stop it. What is your intention? I know you have always held a grudge against me and Yua, but since I have already married you, why won't you let Yua go? Why must you harm her and prevent her from becoming the empress? You!" I raised my hand, a solid slap landed on Xie Ningchen's face, and he swallowed the rest of his words. I shook my stinging hand. Has the Commandery Prince Consort calmed down a bit now? Since the Commandery Prince Consort has achieved the top rank in the imperial examinations, I presume you understand some principles. Talent should be the sole criterion for appointing people, especially when selecting the mother of a nation, no matter how precious your jade is in your heart, in terms of birth and status, which aspect can compare to the daughter of the Duke of Anghua. They firmly believed that with Xie Ningchen marrying me, no one would compete with Xie Yuqing for the position of empress anymore. It was their naivety. The Empress Dowager, with her deep scheming, would never allow the position of empress to fall into the hands of an outsider. Without me, there was still her own niece. Xie Ningchen calmed down and understood this reasoning, yet, he still felt resentful and argued with me. The daughter of the Duke of An's household is merely relying on the Empress Dowager's backing. The governance of a nation should ultimately be in the hands of the Son of Heaven. Shortly after Xie Ningchen achieved the top honors in the imperial examination, he was exceptionally appointed as a 5th-rank censor-in-chief. He believed it was the emperor who valued his talent, unaware that it was the Empress Dowager who pitied me and deliberately promoted my husband. Ironically, despite it being the Empress Dowager's favor, he gradually became a staunch Empress faction member, determined to force the Empress Dowager to return power to the emperor. Xie Ningchen stepped closer to me, his eyes filled with the same venomous resentment as Xie Yuqing's during the day. Which of the 3 obediences and 4 virtues does beating one's husband fall under? The princess is so arrogant, relying solely on the Empress Dowager as her backing. Once the Empress Dowager returns the reins of power, I wonder if the princess will still have any regard for me as her husband. I also raised my head to face him. If that day truly comes, the prince consort may simply write a letter of divorce. Watching him walk further down this path of offending the Empress Dowager, I could only choose to protect myself wisely. Before Xie Yuqing entered the palace, I took the lead and went ahead to meet the chief eunuch in charge of the palace domestic service. I pointed to a palace maid accompanying me and said to him, "Eunuch, when consort Yu enters the palace, Please assign this maid to serve by her side. This maid, named Chuanxi, is my most trusted confidant and exceptionally clever. As long as she could be assigned to Xie Yuqing's palace, she would surely gain Xie Yuqing's trust and gather information for me. Having grown up by the Empress Dowager's side since childhood, everyone in the palace held me in high regard. Since I had spoken up, and it wasn't a major request, how could they refuse? The supervising eunuch readily agreed. Rest assured, Your Highness, I will make the arrangements properly. After leaving the palace, I headed straight for the Qingjing temple outside the city. In her previous life, even after entering the palace, Xie Yuqing never severed her ties with Xie Ningchen. However, one was a concubine and the other an official outside the palace, making it inconvenient for them to meet. Xie Yuqing would often leave the palace in plain clothes, using visits to the Qingjing temple to offer incense as a pretext for secret rendezvous with Xie Ningchen. I summoned the temple's abbot, generously donating over 1,000 taels of silver as incense money, and then showed him portraits of Xie Ningchen and Xie Yuqing. Money can make the devil turn the millstone, and monks are no exception. The abbot nodded repeatedly. Rest assured, benefactor. If the two people in this portrait come to the temple, this humble monk will certainly send someone to inform you. Only after arranging all of this did I finally feel at ease. Although Xie Yuqing was not chosen as the empress, she had won the emperor's full favor. Not only was she immediately granted the title of imperial consort, but she was also bestowed with the honorific title Jade, a distinction that no other imperial consort had received. The second daughter of the Duke of An, Lady Zhao, was plain in appearance and extremely jealous, which did not endear her to the emperor. If I were a man and had to choose between Lady Zhao and Lady Xie, I would likely be drawn to Lady Xie at first glance as well. In her previous life, after Xie Yuqing entered the palace, she was constantly overshadowed by Empress Zhao, which filled her with resentment. Relying on the emperor's favor, she deliberately opposed the empress. The empress could not swallow this insult. Using the pretext of purifying the harem, she found an excuse to have consort Yu slapped in front of all the concubines. Xie Yuqing, proud and haughty, could not endure such humiliation. She cried and made a scene all day long, turning the palace upside down. When the commotion reached the Empress Dowager's ears, it made her so angry that her face turned pale. She smashed a teacup and cursed, "The imperial family, yet it has produced someone as shrewish as this. If word gets out, how will the royal dignity be preserved?" The emperor had initially intended to stand up for consort Yu, but upon hearing that the Empress Dowager had flown into a great rage, he dared not speak further. He punished both the empress and consort Yu equally, docking half a year's salary from each of them. He also ordered consort Yu to be confined to her palace for a month, not allowed to step outside. Lady Yu made a fuss for nothing and gained no advantage, so she had no choice but to turn to Xie Ningchen, weeping and wailing. That evening, Xie Ningchen returned to the mansion with a gloomy face and instructed the kitchen to prepare several dishes I loved. He eagerly invited me to sit at the table, personally warmed a cup of wine, and handed it to me. "Madam, the weather has turned cold. Drink a cup of warm wine to warm yourself up." I was somewhat flattered and took the wine, but did not drink it, hesitating as I said, "Your kindness is much appreciated, but I am with child, I'm afraid." Xie Ningchen suddenly understood, his gaze briefly sweeping over my slightly rounded waist and abdomen, and he tapped his own head. "Look at me, how forgetful I've become. You are with child, and you should indeed be extra careful." He turned and instructed the maid to clear away my wine display, replacing it with a cup of warm tea. He then picked up a piece of fish belly meat, carefully removed the fine bones, and placed it on my plate. He was in high spirits, talking to me at length about what names to give our future child. By the end, a trace of melancholy appeared on his face, and he sighed, "It's just a pity that Sister Yuqing has been having a rather difficult time in the palace." He looked at me and said, "Sister Yuqing is truly in a tight spot this time. Madam, could you put in a good word for her in front of the Empress Dowager?" My hand holding the teacup trembled slightly. So, all of this was to get me to help Xie Yuqing out of her predicament. Yes, in my past life, I could also see through his thoughts. I just couldn't bear to go against him. So the next day, I really went to the palace to request an audience with the Empress Dowager, for the first time in her life. The Empress Dowager was so furious with me, scolding me thoroughly. Matters of the inner palace are to be decided by the Empress. If the Empress cannot handle it, there is still the Emperor. Even I cannot interfere, let alone you. Changning, I see that ever since you married that Xianingchen, you've been muddle-headed, completely forgetting your proper duties. I failed to persuade the Empress Dowager, and Xianingchen's disappointment went without saying. Not long after, heavy snow arrived. The snow fell thick and fast, quickly piling up into a thick layer on the ground. Xianingchen, draped in a black cloak, hurriedly left the mansion. The day before, I had seen Xianingchen pack a bag of gold and silver, and he was gone for the entire night. He didn't return until dawn the next day, rested briefly, and then immediately put on his cloak and left again. He didn't say a single word to me, but I had a premonition and chased after him. "My lord, my lord." I called out to him repeatedly from behind, yet the figure in black showed no hesitation, about to step out the main gate in an instant. My heart burning with anxiety, my foot slipped, and I fell. Soon, a pool of blood flowed out beneath me, spreading across the snowy ground. At that time, I was already 3 months pregnant. "Madam, madam." The servants were terrified and gathered around. Xianingchen paused for a moment, but did not look back. Continuing to step out of the main gate and disappearing from sight in an instant, he never returned that day. A few days earlier, Xie Yuqing and Xianingchen had devised a plan to set an ambush while the Empress Dowager was out of the city to burn incense. He had bribed the commander of the Imperial Guards with a large sum of money, but unexpectedly, the commander turned against him and reported the plot to the Empress Dowager. The Imperial Guards searched.
Consort, you has been saying many bad things about the Empress Dowager in front of the Emperor, accusing her of clinging to power at her age and refusing to let go. Consort, you also said that the Empress Dowager dislikes the Crown Prince, and in the future, she will likely interfere with the affairs of the imperial heirs as well. Although the Emperor dared not openly defy the Empress Dowager, he secretly began to resist, deliberately distancing himself from the Empress. Even on the 1st and 15th days of the lunar month, when he was supposed to visit the Empress's palace, he would find excuses not to go. Gradually, several consorts gave birth to princes and princesses one after another, yet the Empress still showed no signs of pregnancy. The Empress Dowager, seeing this, promptly issued an imperial decree. The eldest prince was to be entrusted to the Empress for upbringing. Consort Yu was promoted to imperial noble consort. She shared her plans with me. Although the eldest prince is still young, he is the most favored by the Emperor and is destined to become the crown prince in the future. The Empress has no children and does not enjoy the Emperor's favor. When I pass away 100 years from now, she will only end up in the cold palace. Entrusting the eldest prince to the Empress for upbringing would, first, make him the legitimate heir, ensuring his succession to the throne is justified and proper. Second, in the future, he will surely remember the Empress's nurturing affection and will not treat her poorly. I couldn't help but admire the Empress Dowager's far-sighted thinking. No matter how you look at it, there's no fault to be found. However, she overlooked Xie Yuqing. This woman is not one to be content with just the title of imperial noble consort. I have a feeling she's about to start causing trouble. On the winter solstice, the Empress Dowager held a banquet in the palace to celebrate the eldest prince being placed under the care of the Empress. Several important ministers from the court, including myself and Xianingchen, were among the invited guests. There were still about 10 days until the winter solstice when Chuanqi brought news that Xie Yuqing, who had been promoted to imperial noble consort, would be going to Qingjing Temple to offer incense and pray for the Empress Dowager. They were about to make their move. I arrived at the temple early, gave instructions to the guest monk, and then hid in the side room. From here, I could clearly see every move in the main room next door through a small hole. Not long after, Xie Ningchen entered the main room first, followed by Xie Yuqing, Ningchen brother. Xie Yuqing collapsed into Xie Ningchen's arms, weeping. That old woman has such a cruel heart. She actually wants to take my son away. Xie Ningchen held her tightly, his heartache clearly visible on his face. Xie Yuqing cried for a while, gradually revealing her intention to plot against the Empress Dowager. Since we've already started, we might as well go all the way and simply poison the old woman. That way, we mother and son won't have to be separated. Not only would they not have to be separated, but with the Empress Dowager dead, the emperor would be able to take power. Then, she would naturally rise in status through her son, rightfully becoming the mistress of the imperial harem. Xie Ningchen showed a troubled expression. You are poisoning the Empress Dowager. I'm afraid this is. Ningchen brother, even you are unwilling to help me. Then who else in this world can I rely on? Xie Yuqing's tears soaked the front of Xie Ningchen's robe. Xie Ningchen quickly took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears. How could I not help you? I'm just thinking about how to proceed. The imperial kitchen is heavily guarded. We simply can't get in, even if we could sneak in. The Empress Dowager has dozens of dishes at each meal. We wouldn't know which one to poison. We can't possibly poison them all. Can we? Xie Yuqing looked up, her face streaked with tears like pear blossoms in the rain, delicate and pitiful. Ningchen, I have a plan. On the day of the winter solstice, after Xie Yuqing revealed her plan, Xie Ningchen hesitated. The strategy is sound, but the Chongning princess has always been cold and distant toward me. I can't even get close to her. Persuading her won't be easy. Xie Yuqing gently stroked Xie Ningchen's face and cooed, if you want to get close to her, I won't allow it. Think carefully, there must be a way. As she spoke, she slowly slipped off her outer garment. Brother Ningchen, not a day goes by in the palace that I don't think of you. Xie Ningchen eagerly pressed down, his voice hoarse as he said, I feel the same way. The bed in the Buddhist temple was simple, but they didn't mind and began to make love passionately, that day. After Xie Ningchen returned to his residence, he was beaming with joy. Madam, look what I've brought for you. Hearing the word madam felt a bit grating to my ears. He raised a box in his hand and handed it to me. Osmanthus cake again, he said softly. My lady, ever since I made a fool of myself while drunk last time, we have been quite distant. You are magnanimous. Please eat this cake and forgive me. Will you? It was more than just distant, after what happened last time. Every time I met Xie Ningchen, several watchful guards followed closely behind me. Thank you, Lord Consort. I had already understood Xie Ningchen's intentions clearly, so I took the pastry and tasted a bite. The Osmanthus cake from Luxiangshai was indeed exceptionally well made, sweet, soft, and glutinous. And even more impressively, it carried a rich, fragrant aroma of Osmanthus. It is already winter, and I have no idea how they managed to preserve the Osmanthus so well. Xie Ningchen, noticing my look of admiration, casually remarked, this Osmanthus cake is exceptionally well made, and it's even more remarkable that it remains fragrant in the winter. Why not offer some to the Empress Dowager during the palace banquet on the winter solstice? My hand, holding the Osmanthus cake, paused for a moment. That's a fine idea. I agreed with Xie Ningchen, and on the winter solstice, when I entered the palace, I personally presented a box of Osmanthus cake to the Empress Dowager during the banquet. Your Majesty, this is a pastry specially sought out by the Commandery Prince from a shop outside the palace. It's quite well made, so I thought to offer it to you. Please taste it and see if it differs from the palace's fare. Xie Ningchen's expression shifted slightly, as if he hadn't expected me to mention that the Osmanthus cake was something he had found and presented. The Commandery Prince is thoughtful. The Empress Dowager picked up a piece of Osmanthus cake. I once again presented the box before the Emperor's seat, with the Imperial Consort also attending the banquet by his side. Your Majesty and the Imperial Consort, please also have a taste. The hand of the Imperial Consort, which was holding the wine pot, trembled slightly. I do not care for this. Thank you, Princess. The Emperor was surprised. Isn't the imperial noble consort always fond of these pastries and sweets? Very well, let me taste it for you. The emperor also picked up a piece. Your Majesty. Xianingchen rose from his seat, but the imperial noble consort glanced at him. Xianingchen paused for a moment, then continued, Your Majesty. Aside from its excellent texture, this Osmanthus cake also has a delightful fragrance. The emperor nodded and took a taste. I returned to Xianingchen's side. Placing a piece on both his plate and mine, Xianingchen declined. I've never been fond of sweets, princess, please enjoy it yourself. I said no more and began to eat on my own. As the banquet neared its end, the imperial noble consort and Xianingchen's eyes kept darting among those who had eaten the Osmanthus cakes, their astonishment growing increasingly difficult to conceal. I let out a cold laugh. It was time to reveal the truth. Rising to my feet, I gracefully walked to the center of the banquet hall and declared loudly, Imperial noble consort, Commandery prince consort, you were so eager for the Empress Dowager, His Majesty, and I to eat the Osmanthus cakes, yet you dared not take a single bite yourselves. Could it be that the cakes are poisoned? With a single word, I shattered the heavens and shook the earth. I began to recount slowly, starting with the noble consort's idle gossip about the Empress Dowager. Then moving on to how the two Xie conspired in the Pure Serenity Temple, plotting their sinister scheme. Several witnesses were then summoned to come forward. Among them were eunuchs and palace maids who confirmed the noble consort's resentment toward the Empress Dowager, as well as the monk who arranged the secret meeting between the two in the Pure Serenity Temple. Also, Xianingchen went to search for the physician who sold the poison. Finally, there was a box of poisonous Osmanthus cakes, which I had replaced with non-toxic ones early on and presented to the Empress Dowager. With each person brought forward, the faces of the two Xies grew paler. When I mentioned, although their original intention was only to poison the Empress Dowager, they did nothing to stop the emperor from eating the cakes just now. They must be trying to go with the flow. If both the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were to fall victim to poison, they could then rightfully support the eldest prince to ascend the throne. I spoke each word clearly. Their hearts are utterly malicious, and their crimes deserve death. But in my heart, their sins go far beyond that. Asking me to present the cake, they had calculated that I am close to the Empress Dowager, and she would not suspect me, thus confidently eating the poisoned pastry. And if it were later discovered that the cake was poisoned, they could conveniently shift the blame onto me. What was most detestable was Xianingchen, who had just said to me, the princess may partake as she wishes, for the sake of his beloved, even if it meant pushing me to my death, he wouldn't so much as bat an eye. Ever since I overheard Xie Yuqing's sinister plot in the side room of Qingjing Temple, urging Xianingchen to have me present the cake, I had made up my mind. Following their poisonous scheme, they pretended to offer the cake, but in reality, they exposed their true faces. At this moment, Xianingchen and Xie Yuqing both turned ashen-faced. Xianingchen knelt on the ground and said, "It was all my idea alone. The imperial consort knew nothing about it. This man truly is a devoted lover, protecting Xie Yuqing even at the cost of his own life. Unfortunately, things have come to this point, and who would believe his words now?" Xie Yuqing collapsed in tears beside the emperor. "Your Majesty." The Empress Dowager remained silent, her gaze fixed on the emperor. The emperor's face darkened. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand dismissively. Xie Yuqing's cruelty must have chilled the emperor's heart. With a wave of the emperor's hand, Xianingchen was executed on the spot. Xie Yuqing was ordered to commit suicide, and the poison she took was none other than the box of Osmanthus cakes they had presented. The entire Xie family was executed, and their household was wiped out. As for me, although I am Xianingchen's wife, I disregarded our marital bond and upheld justice by exposing the Xie brothers' sinister plot. I saved the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, and even made the Emperor see Xie Yuqing for who she truly was, leading him to personally order her execution. From then on, the relationship between the Empress Dowager and the Emperor is bound to ease, and the Empress may also make a comeback. Thus, far from being implicated, I have instead earned the Empress Dowager's greater sympathy, as she pities me for being widowed at a young age, just like her. Chongning, Should you ever wish to remarry in the future, I will personally arrange it for you. If not, there are many talented young men in our dynasty. If any catch your eye, feel free to bring them into your manor without hesitation. Should anyone dare utter a single word of gossip, I will make sure they are silenced. This is giving me an imperial decree, allowing me to take male consorts by royal command, tomorrow. I will dutifully follow this decree and search far and wide to see if there are any handsome young gentlemen who can catch my eye. From then on, I will peacefully live as the Princess Changning, enjoying all the wealth and honor, and remain forever tranquil. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.